Welcome to Discover DeSoto, a podcast brought to you by the Patterson Foundation. In this podcast, you'll hear stories from all corners of DeSoto County through the lens of DeSoto County Ahead, from residents to community leaders and everyone in between. Join us as we discover DeSoto, one story at a time. Hi, I'm Alicia Exantis, Community Engagement Specialist with the Patterson Foundation, and your host today. Joining me is Karissa Roosa, All-Face Food Bank, Director of the DeSoto Food and Resource Center, to dive into more about the impact she and her organization are making in DeSoto County. Karissa, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, we're so excited to have you here today to hear a little bit more and dive in a little deeper. Let's go ahead and start from the beginning. How long have you lived in DeSoto County and what brought you there?
Good question. So I've been in DeSoto for just over a year, maybe about a year and 4 months now. Honestly, so my husband and I moved to Florida from Colorado.
Okay.
He had grown up kind of split between Colorado and Florida. And I'm always one for an adventure. And he's like more of a rooted person. So I'm like, all right, the only way I'm going to get adventurous is if I go somewhere that is like roots for him. So Florida, it was. So we came down to Florida, and then first year we just rented. We were actually not in DeSoto County, we're in Manatee County,
okay,
and kind of like trying to figure out where do we want to be.
Okay.
And he was in law enforcement academy in Sarasota, and then was looking around at the different agencies that he was interested in working with. He really loved the DeSoto County Sheriff's Department and just their engagement with the community and the culture of the Sheriff's Department. And so I started looking, and I had worked in the nonprofit sector before, and so I was looking for a nonprofit role, not specifically actually in DeSoto County, just in the area.
Okay.
It really matters to me that when the job that I'm doing day to day, that I feel like I'm making a difference or making an impact. And so it had been a while since I did nonprofit work, but I knew that that is how that type of line of work made me feel. So I was like, let's go nonprofit. I somehow ended up on All-Face Food Bank website, I think through my like internet sleuthing skills of like trying to find all the nonprofits in the area, whatever.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And they had this role open, and it was the director of the Food and Resource Center. I applied, and it was really a unique fusion of all the different things I had done before. And then before I knew it, I was offered the role. He was offered his job. We were both working in DeSoto County, and we bought a house and moved over, and we live a mile from where we work, and
awesome.
The rest is history. So we're there.
Awesome. I know you mentioned your husband loved the uniqueness and that warm feeling of the law enforcement in DeSoto mm-hmm. County. What else makes DeSoto County unique? Now that you've lived there for over a year, what's mm-hmm. unique about living in DeSoto County?
So it's a really interesting community. We both, it's obviously a small town, mm-hmm. and we both enjoy that. You have access to other communities, which for us works. Okay. But DeSoto itself just has a sense of magic. It's a small town that people who live there love to live there. Mm-hmm. I think you sometimes find those small towns that the narrative or the mindset is like, oh, one day I'm going to get out of here. Like, this place is horrible, whatnot. In DeSoto, Arcadians and DeSoto Countyans, they mm-hmm. don't have that mindset. They love their community, and they're proud of their community. There is this sometimes mindset of like, this is our town. Mm-hmm. And so, which is wonderful, and it's sometimes hard as a newcomer to break into that community. But once people would ask me, oh, like, where are you joining from? And I'm like, oh, I live a mile down the road. Then they're all open of like, oh my gosh, like, how do you like it? What's it like? What do you think?
Great.
All the things. Yeah. So I really love that it's the small town feel, but the pride and, joy of people's like citizenship to that community. They love it. And it's infectious mm-hmm. to me. So we've only been there for a short time, but I feel like a member of the community in such a short time,
Mm-hmm. But that word magical gives me goosebumps. It's hard to explain when you're mm-hmm. in DeSoto how special it is.
Yes.
Everyone is so warm and inviting, but the love they have for their town, mm-hmm. it's kind of like what you see in movies or read in books, coming from someone who doesn't live in a small town, and it's special. It's definitely special.
And I have lived in small towns, right? Okay. So like, I mean, in Colorado, I was in a 5,000 person town. I grew up in a 35,000 person town, so not tiny, but not a city by any means. And I would say that Arcadia is very, they love their parade. There's a parade for everything, and there's engagement and participation in that parade for everything. There is,
awesome.
Everyone's just...
The rodeo.
Yes.
I hear about the rodeo often.
Yes. So that's the thing too, is the community is very engaged with what's going on there, because I also think that the community is dictating what's going on there. It's not one of those things where, I don't know, someone is trying to throw a parade and then no one shows up, because the community is throwing the parade, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and it brings us straight to the Patterson Foundation's involvement and why DeSoto is so important to us and working there. As you know, the Patterson Foundation's initiative has been involved in DeSoto County through DeSoto County Ahead, to encourage community members to learn from each other, share their experiences, and collectively evolve to create a stronger, more resilient community. So part of the DeSoto County Ahead's work was conducting a series of community conversations and roundtable conversations. I know you were a part of those roundtable conversations, and we can get to those, but something had to come before. So tell me, how did you get involved? How did you hear about what the Patterson Foundation was doing? Tell me more, Karissa.
Yes. So I had someone in our organization, I guess, was on, because we've worked, All Face Food Bank and Patterson Foundation have worked together beyond this. And so they were on a mailing list for Sherry Corrier was going to the local library to talk about digital navigators and the Digital Access for All initiative. And it landed on my calendar as a forward, because now, Chris is the DeSoto person, so it just came. I had no idea what it was. I knew nothing. But I was like, I guess I better show up because it's on my calendar. I'd only been there a couple of days, so I didn't know what was what. And I showed up, and there was Sherry, and she's talking about the Digital Access for All initiative. I thought it was great. Knew just enough to be dangerous, and was like, yeah, sign us up. Let's get involved.
Awesome.
And then from there, eventually, Sherry came to the Food and Resource Center that I oversee, and to talk more about digital navigators, as well as asking us if we would be a access site, to pass out the DeSoto Digest.
Okay, great.
So then I was like, let's do it. Again, at this point, knowing just enough to be dangerous, I'm like, why not? Sounds like a great idea. And then I got an invite on my calendar because I was on Sherry's mailing list at that point. And it was Rich Harwood was coming to one of the schools. And so I grabbed my husband, and it was an evening thing. And then from there, that's kind of how it went. First partnering with the Patterson Foundation, just coincidentally on one thing and then the next, and then I found myself at the presentation and for DeSoto County Ahead.
Before we go into the roundtable conversations, you said so many things there. So partnering with different initiatives with the Patterson Foundation, I do hear you saying Digital Access for All. I recently saw you at the symposium. It was great to see you there. And then I'm curious about SEGLR, our Suncoast campaign for grade level reading. Are you working with them at all?
So for Remake Learning Days?
Yep.
We are. So last year we had 2 events, one at the FRC at our center, and then one at the library. And so we'll have the same this year.
Awesome.
Definitely hands-on and fun.
I can drop a QR code. I will drop a QR code of Remake Learning Days. So if anyone's listening and you'd like to go, they can find that there. Okay, so you are clearly a ray of sunshine. You walked into this room, you light it up. You tell me you're a world traveler, you've lived in all these places. So you just spread your sunshine everywhere you go. You come to DeSoto, you start spreading through TPF initiatives. Then you walk into this school to hear Rich Harwood speak. You've never heard him speak. You take your husband who has no idea what he's doing there with you.
Yes.
I've heard him speak multiple times. What did you think about that?
I thought it was really good. I think what stood out to me was his honesty, but it was more of meeting the initiative and the community where the community was at, rather than creating an image of where it was at, which is really important, because I think that if we fail to acknowledge where a community is, strengths and opportunities wise, then we can't move forward adequately from that. And so I think what stood out to me was his willingness, first of all, to answer head on hard questions that people did ask. Their involvement in tapping leaders and community members to build that public knowledge and to inform what they were doing. And then, like I said, that just meeting the community where the community was at, not trying to shape DeSoto into something DeSoto is not, because DeSoto is a very unique place, and maintaining that uniqueness, because there is beauty in it. There may be opportunity, certainly, but there's also beauty in it. And I think it was a neat way to honor it all in one space.
The first couple of times he would visit and speak, people would ask him questions and he would always go back to, I don't know yet. We have to have our conversations. We have to do the round tables. And I could see some were frustrated where others were like, okay, you're not just jumping. You're not arriving with the answers. You're really looking for us, which leads us to that nonprofit roundtable conversation. You were a part of it, representing all faiths, but also you're a citizen of the community. How did it go? How was that experience? Was it what you expected? Was it hard? Was it awkward? Tell me.
It was all of the above. For me, it's more than just looking at it through the lens of working with the food bank, but it's also looking at the lens of like, this is my community. What are the aspirations that I have as a citizen, not just as Karissa, the director of the Food and Resource Center type thing. And so sitting at the table with the other nonprofit leaders, it was all the things. It was exciting to see there were quite a few, it was quite large. There were quite a few organizations and a lot of people who showed up. And so that was really encouraging. Then there was times of that I felt like it was sobering because some of the tensions or some of the opportunities for growth in the community were reflected in the room as well.
Okay.
But then again, the way that Rich and his team were able to just navigate it, I think like where we went from the start to the end of those conversations was transforming to a certain extent. I don't want to say that we walked in and walked out whole new people, right? But it did create this sense of hope and understanding of that we can move this mountain. And also, I think one thing that's hard about DeSoto is you absolutely have your people who say, if you ask them what their aspiration for this community is, it's for it to stay the same. They don't want anything to change. And so I think if I sit today and look back at that roundtable and where we are now, I can now see the progression of mindset of a lot of people and I don't even like to call it buy-in because it's not buy-in, but the ownership. Like the ownership of, I am, not speaking about me, but others in the community too, I am an expert on my community and I can share my voice at the table and I want to share my voice at the table. And that has grown, I would say.
Great. I thank you so much for doing the conversation. I know it can be really uncomfortable and you're, again, probably how your husband felt walking into the middle school.
Yeah.
You have that feeling of what am I getting myself into? But from that conversation and all those roundtables, interviews with specific leaders in the community came the Public Capital Report from the Harwood Institute, who we partner with. That report was called DeSoto County Coming Together, and it was only born because of all of those interviews, all of that data, all of that information. So some key recommendations for investing in and growing the community's civic capacities and renewing a sense of possibility and hope were outlined in that report. I wanted to go ahead and point out two of them. One of them was cultivating leaders who are turned outward, like yourself. Another one was enlist more community members as leaders. And that leads us to January 2025. Change happens at the speed of trust. So it feels like it really started picking up pace, but we're talking about years here. We're talking about a lot of time. So the conversations happen, all the data is taken, the Public Capital Report is written. And again, you know me, I will drop that QR code so everyone can go and look. And you can even see those recommendations there towards the end. Then we go to January 2025, where we have the Public Innovators Lab. You are invited there with 50 other leaders. That had to be completely different than the conversation. I was there with you. That was a really awesome experience. Yes. I'd love to hear how you felt going in, what you took away from it, and if you've already made any connections. Yeah.
So going in, transparently, nonprofits, I think this is universal nonprofit work. Your world's always busy. There's always things to still get done. So honestly, I'm like, oh, I know I signed up for this, and it's because I've attended all these other ones, and we'll get to it when we get to it, type thing.
Yeah.
And so then when I walked in, so I don't know that I had, my mind was a bit too busy, I think, to create an expectation of what I thought I was walking into. But I did know, I went to the orientation, and so I had already gotten the message, I'm not going to be multitasking. Laptops could be up, type thing, and which was so good, because as someone who can multitask a million multitasks at a time, it's not always the best thing, right? And especially not for building connections and relationships and developing and really exploring in a reflection type way different things. So it was wonderful that no laptops were out for that. I was impressed because I think a lot of the Public Innovators Lab were also those that were at the round tables for example, the nonprofit round table or whatnot. And I hadn't at least worked with them on anything Harwood Institute, DeSoto County had related in between that time. But that's where I talked about that mindset shift of I wouldn't have thought when I was sitting at the round table that this was the group of people who were going to be so eager to learn and work together and change, because these are also people who have hesitations. I was pleasantly surprised by the engagement. And as the 2 days went on, the engagement just, went up and more people got involved. Yeah, I was encouraged. And it was also really cool for me to see because there was so much that I could learn. Because we all bring something to the table, and I may bring, certain transferable skills or whatnot, but what I don't bring that a lot of those leaders brought was the tenure in the community. I have learned what I've learned in the, year and 4 months or whatnot that I've been there. And I feel like I've learned a lot, but there's still so much more to learn. And so I think that was one of my favorite things, is just watching, like, it could have been an experience where it was like, oh gosh, this isn't going to go over well because people aren't really, they're just here to check a box. But that wasn't it. It was like, no, these people are here because they want to be here, and people are engaged. And that encouraged me to also be more engaged. And so I really enjoyed it. And then, since then, so we broke apart into different initiatives, and I'm a part of the health initiative. And so we've been meeting with that. So I'm, was voted as leader of the health initiative. We'll see how that goes.
Of course you were.
I don't know. So we're in the segment now of that where we're doing community conversations. So 3 by the end of April, we've got some of them coming up. And we'll actually be doing, one of the ones that we'll be doing is paired on with the digital navigators that will be coming out to give some devices. We were like, hey, let's piggyback off that and turn it into conversations. And so that's what we've been doing. I think one thing in DeSoto is there's a lot going on, but it's not always connected. And any avenues to make, and I don't want to say formal connections, but yes, formal connections, because to a certain extent, people change, like roles, turnover, whatnot, and then you lose the connections between certain organizations because it's based on a person. And so the more and more of these types of forums that exist, I think I've seen create stronger relationships organically, whether it's the purpose or not, or whether it's the item we're working on the agenda or not. It just forces a lot more of that cross collaboration. And then hopefully, stronger forums of collaborating with the rest of the organizations. And there's already collaboration that happens. It's not to say that that's not happening, but I think there's always ways to be more effective.
And even more strengthen it, right?
Yes, yep.
So I know there's the 4 groups. There's the housing group. That's the one I'm in. You said health. There's faith-based, and then education or youth.
Yes.
I believe it's youth. If someone wanted to get involved with a group or even come to a community conversation, I want you to know at the pattersonfoundation.org, we do have a list of our initiatives. You can find DeSoto County ahead there. We'll make sure your email is linked if someone would like to connect with you in that health group, or my email will be linked as well. So just to think that there's 4 groups, they're each going to have 3 conversations. That's a total of 12 community conversations. Even if there's 10 people there, that's 120 new people that could be, have a voice.
Yes.
We're not arriving with the answer. We want to hear their aspirations. We want community change that is driven by aspirations. That's what we're hoping for. So I'm going to flip it on you.
Okay.
I know you're a public innovator and you get to ask all those questions, but I want to ask you, what are your aspirations for DeSoto County?
To maintain that charm and that magic of that people feel that sense of community and pride because it's its own like little thing, to maintain that with also providing more access to basic resources for the community. So like to see there right now in DeSoto County, for any mother who wants to deliver their baby, they're driving to Porch, Charlotte, or they're driving to Sarasota, they're driving elsewhere. We don't have that. That's a basic function in DeSoto County, right? So like the vision would be like to have that unit at the hospital so that mothers we're not seeing mothers that are 6 months along at the food bank where we're connecting with groceries, but that have not seen a doctor because they don't have transportation to go an hour away or however long to go see a doctor for that. So it's, for me, it's not about just changing this community into something that it's not. Mm-hmm. It is about making that day-to-day life for the community that already exists to connect those people with more of what they need in their daily lives.
Okay.
So whether that's, in the health community, for example, access to those basic things, or whether in the education, quality education, schools that are large enough to where it's not teeming with children in the hallway where if you drop a phone, you can't reach down to pick it back up because there's so many people in the space, or whether it's safe places and for kids to go hang out and youth to hang out with in the evening. But it's that's what I see as not a community that's necessarily population is skyrocketing and businesses are coming in. And I think that's kind of sometimes the fear that people have, because that does take away from that magic.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's not that we get a Starbucks or that we get at this or that we get at that. It's more that the community that exists already can have access to the resources that they already have a need for, but do not have access to, I think is how I see it.
Really important.
Yeah.
Really important. And I am going to get into resources because that's how I met you. So we met in January at the DeSoto County Ahead event, January 2025 again. Because of those hurricanes, everything got pushed to January, which is fine. And your booth was right next to mine. And I was so impressed with you and your team. Of course, you come in shining bright and I was like, oh, look at her. And your team they did not stand behind that table. They were out walking around, talking to people, handing things out. It was very clear, like, we have resources. We want to get it in your hands. So let's talk about All Faiths.
Okay.
I would love to hear some things that you do for the community, some resources you offer, any type of outreach. Just throw me some of your highlights. I'd love to hear more.
No problem. Okay, so I'll start by saying that as an organization, we serve Sarasota County and DeSoto County.
Okay.
So in DeSoto County specifically, we have the Food and Resource Center, and that's unique to DeSoto County. It's actually not many food banks around the country have a model like that, so it's unique and just in general to food banking, but it's a newer model. And so essentially it's a one-stop shop, if you will, where neighbors can, and we call our while others might refer to clients, whatnot, we say neighbors. Okay. So the people that we serve are our neighbors. So it's a one-stop shop where neighbors come in. They can get groceries. So we distribute food moving to 5 days a week, distributing food from that location. We do distribute food more than just from that location. Okay. And they get dry goods, they get fresh produce, they get meat. There's all kinds of extra things. So for example, right now we have orange juice from Joshua Citrus, which is literally a local farm like down the street.
Oh, wow.
And so we try to focus heavily on also that fresh food, not just the non-perishables.
Awesome.
So neighbors can come in and get that food. We also have a food is medicine program. So we have benefit specialists that can process applications for example, SNAP, Medicaid, Social Security. We help process applications for Seasons of Sharing, which is not our program, but we process applications for that, which helps people with rental, utility assistance, financially to be able to cover that. We have case management where we would kind of walk alongside them for up to 3 months, however long, to help connect them with whatever resources outside of what we do that they may need. And then we also we partner with other organizations in the community, for example, DeSoto Cares, homeless services. So we make food bags specifically for the unhoused neighbors, where we're mindful of what we're putting in it. So pop-top cans, non-perishable protein sources, things like that. Okay. And so then we give those to DeSoto Cares and they go give them out to the community. We try to partner with the agricultural community too. So where the migrant camps where we do food drops there. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite little things is, and this is like a best kept secret. Okay. But between me and the whole world. Give it to me. So no, we have this program, and it's very intertwined with our case management program. So it's not just like anyone can sign up for it. Okay. But we're once a week, our FRC associate who drives our box truck, he goes literally to people's houses and delivers groceries to them for people who are not able to drive, or they don't have someone who can. So a lot of times elderly, maybe sick or elderly neighbors. And so that's we had last year in our center, we had 21,000 visits for food across the year. Only 122 were home visits. So it's a very small portion. However, it's one of those things that I think, like we were talking about DeSoto County being like this little magical nugget. It's like, even though we're growing, I love that we still have that.
Yeah.
Because it is very grounding into like, oh, Mr. and Mrs. this and this said hi, or like it's very like small town DeSoto. And
yes.
So I love that. We also have, this is where we partner with you guys actually for digital navigators most often. We have our wraparound services program. And so that is a program where I kind of I just finished a 2-week survey with neighbors, but we've surveyed before this too, where we kind of ask what resources and what access to what type of services do you most need? Okay. And then we go out, I go out into the community and I try to find organizations that offer those services so that we're not competing or we're not recreating the wheel.
Nice.
With that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we bring them in and they offer those services. So for example, digital navigators, they come in second Wednesday of every month.
Okay.
They're at the FRC, or the Food and Resource Center.
Okay.
And they provide services there. We also have, for example, Rebuild Florida that helps people with fixing their homes from hurricane damage. They're there on a weekly basis. Or Social Security Administration comes out once a month, or CAN Community Health, the health department. So the vision there is that one-stop shop, so that neighbors can come in, they can not only have access to their groceries that they might need, but whatever other services. And we've seen neighbors who come get their food specifically based on what other services will be there that day, because transportation's an issue in DeSoto County. So if you can get that ride there, or take the bus or walk or take your bike or whatnot, and take advantage of more than just one thing while you're there, then it's like prime condition there. So
I mean, so many ripple effects. I hear you talking about different organizations, different neighbors, and how it just all spreads through DeSoto. What I'm hearing also is that really everywhere in DeSoto is benefiting from your resources, would you say?
Yeah. So I would say, because that's just our Food and Resource Center specifically. But we have, I'd mentioned earlier why it matters so much to me that we're creating these forums to have strong partnerships between organizations, is because we heavily rely on our partners in the community, because we also distribute food out of other locations. Okay. So that might be, for example, at the DeSoto County Library, we have a pantry there, and they run that pantry. So they have their own volunteers and everything. We deliver the food to them, and then they run it. Okay. Same thing with like Catholic Charities. We have also a pantry for the students at the South Florida State College. So we have those types of things, but we also have our mobile distributions, which is like a truck shows up, parks it, unloads the pallets, and like cars drive through with their trunks popped open. Wow. And we, put the food in their trunks. And that even requires partnership, because we'll do it at a church parking lot, or also at the State College, there's one, or different locations like that. We have, I think we're up to 81 distributions a month in DeSoto County for food distributions. We couldn't have that without those partnerships.
There's my question. Mm-hmm. If someone has someone that could be a neighbor, if they need those resources, if someone wants to become a volunteer because they hear what you're saying and they're like, wow,
yes,
that's that feel-good feeling that I want to have. Or if there is another partner that's like, wow, how can I connect? How do I get them in touch with you?
We can put my email on there if that works. Yeah,
okay.
Because that's the best way probably, is to email me. Absolutely. We have partnered in lots of different ways, whether it's volunteering or whether it's, different of the senior communities. For example, the 55 plus communities will do, whether it's a canned food drive or whatnot, and then reach out and ask like, how can we partner in that way? Or actually in April, every Tuesday, we are hosting bingo every Tuesday night.
Stop it.
At Three Trees, which is a local brewery in DeSoto.
Okay.
And it's new. And so they pick a different nonprofit each month. All faces in April, and I'll be calling out bingo each night. And then that bingo is by donation. And then that money will come to us, and it will be part of our cash campaign, actually, which is matched dollar for dollar. And that is the campaign for summer hunger. Because when schools close, the kids stop getting fed.
Yeah.
And so you have to think about all the kids that rely on their hot meals, like breakfast and lunch from school, because DeSoto is a Title I county, which means every school is Title I, which means translates to a lot of children are relying on that meal program at school.
Yeah.
So in the summer, we pop up additional hot meal sites or food distribution sites to offset that.
Okay.
And so actually, that's another great way to come out and play bingo in April.
Tuesdays in April at the brewery. One more time, it's called
6:30. It's called Three Trees.
Three Trees Brewery.
Yes.
Okay, great. Before we wrap up today, I have to ask, since this is Discover DeSoto, What's one thing you'd highlight about DeSoto County? Whether it's a hidden gem, a favorite place to shop, a local dining spot, or a unique outdoor activity, what's something everyone should make sure to discover when they're in DeSoto?
Okay, I'm thinking in two lenses, right?
Okay.
If I'm thinking DeSoto County residents.
Okay.
All right. So there's this thing, and it's called Porch Night. And it is for anyone who lives in, works in, or is interested in. So that can be anybody. The historic district. But it's not like we get together and talk about the historic district. Literally all it is on that Tuesday night, it's like a potluck. Like I brought chips and dip like last Tuesday, whenever it happened. And it's during the winter, it's hosted at people's houses.
Okay.
And so like the November or December one was at my house. And then during the summer, it'll be at businesses. And it's literally anyone. And it's just, I think how it started was before me, but I think the community really came together after Hurricane Ian, and people were really connected and talking, and neighbors on each other's porches and whatnot, and they wanted to find a way to like keep that going.
Okay.
And that sense of connection. So it happens at businesses or houses or things that are in that historic district, but it's for anyone. And I feel like that is, not a lot of people know about it, and it's small, but it's cool, and you see all kinds of people there. So that's
Porch Nights. That's what it's called?
Porch Night. Yep.
Porch Night. Okay.
Yep.
That sounds like it goes right under that magical. What makes DeSoto magical?
Yeah.
Porch Nights.
Yeah.
That is so special. Yeah. Okay. Your second thing, you're breaking the rules here, but we'll take one more.
Florida Farmhouse. They have like coffee, tea, boba. They have
Florida Farmhouse, you said? Okay,
yes.
Great.
And they have exotic plants in there too. And fun fact, my husband and I go there probably once a week and play a game of checkers because they have board games too.
Okay, so it's a great spot to go hang out, have your coffee. Awesome. Karissa, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for what you're doing in DeSoto County. I can feel your passion. You are amazing. You're amazing. I can't wait to see what you do with your group, especially being the leader of that group. And listeners, to learn more, please visit thepattersonfoundation.org and stay tuned for more Discover DeSoto. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Together, we can create a DeSoto where opportunity, pride, and connection thrive.